Urban Meyer and Nick Saban, are they just blatant liars or do they not pay attention? John, Nick Saban said that he doesn't see any differences between Joe Milton and Hendon Hooker. What are your thoughts?
Well, they're both human. Other than that, well, let's face it. I mean, we talk about Caleb likes to bring out dumb coaching moves. What if we did a segment on coaching lies? All coaches lie. It's just part of the gig. They have to lie. They say great things about opponents. They say things that aren't true. They say things about their own players that aren't true. Go back to preseason when Tennessee, the transfer, Oregon transfer, Dante Thornton, the wide receiver, was made out to be the second coming of Randy Moss. He can barely get on the field even when Tennessee loses its best receiver in Brew McCoy to injury. Yeah, that's just the way the game is played. That makes no sense. I mean, Joe Milton isn't Jarrett Garantano.
Yeah, no. Wow. Let's get into that for a second. And I like how you reference Dante Thornton. He does. He's more like Randy Drops instead of Randy Moss. As far as Cam Newton, should we put those?
Yeah, come on.
Should we put those comparisons aside? Because John, yes, the two might line up and in a straight line be able to run the same 40 time. They might be very similar in arm strength and all that. But I think people forget that Cam could throw the ball with a whole lot of touch.
Cam Newton probably had the most dominant season in SEC history. I've seen all the great quarterbacks dating back for 50 years. And that one season when Cam led Auburn to a national championship, he was phenomenal. He did everything. I can still remember him going out, splitting out wide to the right, go to the Wildcat package, catches a touchdown pass over two defenders. Just an amazing athlete. As you said, great touch. I remember in an SEC championship game against South Carolina, last play of the game, launches a Hail Mary. He flipped his wrist, 50 yards, boom, touchdown. No, that's just a really silly comparison. I don't know why anybody would say that. They're both tall.
Nah, and let's remember, Caleb, Urban Meyer has a lot of football to watch to be an analyst. Is he watching each and every game? Caleb, I doubt it very seriously.
No, he's not. And to his credit, he said he's not watching as much Tennessee, but he based this off of Joe Milton's size and things like that. But Urban Meyer did coach against, he didn't coach against Joe Milton because he was already gone by the time Joe Milton was at Michigan, if I'm not mistaken. But at the same time, he's familiar with Joe Milton because I'm sure he knew him on the recruiting trail from 2018. So I think Urban Meyer is just flat out lying on that. And I mean, honestly, I think Nick Saban's lie was worse. I'll just tell you guys that right now. I think it was even more embarrassing because he is studying Joe Milton.
Yep. Go ahead and get on board now. Hit that like and subscribe button. We greatly appreciate that. Talking Joe Milton, and it's brought to you by AndyMasonRealEstate.com. AndyMasonRealEstate.com. Best prices, service in the biz, and it's not even close. That's AndyMasonRealEstate.com. Over 40 years of experience in his office, and he will take care of you. He has done so for me. Best realtor in East Tennessee, no question about it. John, so where are we with Joe Milton? It has become readily apparent to me, as I reported a long time ago, that it is Joe Milton's job to not only lose, but have to give away practically. And I don't see any change with Nico or anybody else out there. We had some people in the message board asking, could Gaston Moore do the same thing that Joe Milton's doing now? I kind of giggled at first, but could he?
Dave, he went 11 of 22 for 100 yards against Texas A&M. He threw a perfect interception to an A&M safety in the end zone when Tennessee was knocking on the door and trying to put the game away. He made two boneheaded plays on the sidelines. Once when he just ran out of bounds when when a first down was hanging in the balance and he just drifted to the sideline, almost as though there was a magnetic pull forcing him to go there. And then all of a sudden, at the last minute, he decides to throw the ball before he goes out, and he throws it to a player out of bounds. Then there was a play where Tennessee the other team was obviously offsides. Fans have become attuned to that. Okay, they're offsides, free play. What does he do? He runs out of bounds. Then there was bizarre play when he had contact on the sideline, is standing over defender. I don't know why he wasn't called for unsportsmanlike conduct. He was taunting the player. Quarterbacks don't do that stuff. Wide receivers do, DBs do, but quarterbacks just don't do that kind of thing. I don't know how much worse he has to be for Tennessee not to make a change, unless maybe Nico's not what we were led to believe he is.
May I say, Caleb, that I said this, and I'm not trying to break my arm, pat myself on the back. It would take something massively huge. Maybe it was last week, but I don't think it was even that big for Joe Milton to lose this starting job. Maybe you can back me a little bit on that. I said that in the preseason, it would take something monstrous for Joe Milton to be replaced by Nico. But I'll ask you the question. I mean, could Gaston Moore do the same thing that Joe Milton's doing right now?
Yes, he could. And again, this goes back to my biggest criticism of Heupel's talent evaluation. To ever think Joe Milton was better than Hendon Hooker. And John, that's where I wanted to get with you was, what was dumber, Urban Meyer comparing Joe Milton to Cam Newton, or Nick Saban saying Joe Milton is no different from Hendon Hooker when Nick Saban's watching Joe Milton?
No, Nick Saban clearly wins the dumb contest. But you got to keep in mind, what are these coaches trying to accomplish there? I mean, Urban Meyer's not a coach right now. Maybe he's trying to, I don't know, just be a nice guy or something, being complimentary before Tennessee crowd. Who knows what? But how you could seriously say that is beyond me. But for Nick Saban to do it, but Caleb, you know how coaches are getting ready to play a game. I mean, they lavish praise on every opposing player. I remember one time I listened to Vince Dooley press conference. I was in Athens, Georgia, and Georgia was getting ready to play an FCS opponent. Not a good FCS opponent, a bad FCS opponent. And he honestly made that team sound like the New England Patriots at their highest peak in dynasty days. That's just what a lot of coaches do. And apparently that's what Nick Saban's doing. He's going old school with lavish the opponent with praise. And I don't know what that accomplishes, but good for him. Like if he said something critical, that would fire up Tennessee. Like if he told the truth.
Well, you don't have to criticize. Just don't lie. Just say they play great defense and they can move the ball on the ground and they're a threat. But you don't have to sit there and say Joe Milton is the same as Hendon Hooker. And again, and Dave, you've covered football, so this goes back to Josh Heupel starting Joe Milton over Hendon Hooker 2 years ago. Are coaches seeing something in Joe Milton that we as fans just know is not true? Is there like some coach love with Joe Milton?
John, along those lines, I think it's pretty simple now. The guy's probably a really good practice player. But when the lights come on, he's a different guy, reactionary and upstairs.
Yeah, I've heard that Joe Milton does fine in practice, does well, and yeah, preparation and those kind of things. But let's face it, I mean, the best players answer the bell. They raise their game. Of course, I mean, Tom Brady was the very best at that. But what I don't understand about Joe Milton, and it goes back to 2 years ago, one of the most flagrantly bad decisions I've ever seen on a football field was when he ran out of bounds against Ole Miss on the last play of the game. I mean, you're losing. You got to just chunk it in the end zone, hope for an interference call, hope for the best. But just the lack of field awareness, and maybe that doesn't show up in practice. But
sorry, John. I racked my brain a little bit because Caleb asked me about a week ago, is there a player that was better in practice than he was in games? And one I came up with was Brent Schaefer, who was as good as Eric Ainge perhaps in practice at times, especially with his athletic ability, but he was not nearly as good in games as he was in practice. He was really good with a baseball bat as he was approaching other college students, John.
Hey now.
Yeah, he could, not a big guy, but he could hit the long ball, so to speak.
Chicks love the long ball.
Except they also love Derek Jeter, who's the most overrated player ever and couldn't hit the long ball, but different story.
You will shut your mouth right now.
That's a permanent ban material there, isn't it, Dave?
I know where you live. I will be at your house by the end of the day. All right.
He's not a top 5 Yankee of all time.
He does a nice commercial, though.
He does.